Library. I hope you had a lovely Christmas and I hope you had a great New Year. Obviously this is the beginning of the new year, but yeah, I hope that it's a good one for you. We have to be optimistic and we have to believe that the next year is going to be better than the last year. Unless you had a really great year, then obviously you want it to be the same or even better. But yes, I hope you had a really good Christmas. Okay, so today's book that I'm reviewing is The Memory Trees by Wallace. I got this book in my November's Book Box Club. For those of you that don't know about it, it's a subscription box and I get it every month, and each month has a different theme. This month's theme was Haunted Minds, and that is why we got this book called The Memory Trees. Like, if it's a fairy tale princess things, there'll be things that relate to princesses. If it's winter fairy tales, which was the December box one, which books that I will be reviewing and I will let you know when I've read them, those ones are basically, it was all fairy tale related, so it had some like lovely little marshmallows and anything that was related to that theme of the book. So The Memory Tree is a spooky kind of theme. I love this book. I loved this book. I love this theme. It's one of my favourite themes that they've done. I think the first theme that I ever got was the time travel one, and that book was Waking in Time. I don't have it on me, which is annoying, but when I do get it I will do a little review about it and let you know what that was about, because that was a really good book. This is right up my street. A lot of people were a little bit like, oh, I don't know if this is going to be my kind of thing, but this is my kind of thing and I love it. And the thing that I love about the Book Box Club is it's all young adult YA books, and they're my kind of thing that I love. I think I'll always love young adult books because I try and read other types of books and I don't always necessarily like them. I do try, and other ones, like I have read The Girl on the Train, I have read S as a Stranger, I have read lots of different types of books, but this is definitely something that I loved the most. Lovegood's life has been shaped by the stories of the women who came before her. Brave, resistant ancestors who settled long ago on an unusual apple orchard in Vermont. The land has been passed down through generations, and Sorrow and her family take pride in its strange history. Their offbeat habits may be ridiculed by other townspeople, especially their neighbours, the Abrams family, but for the first 8 years of her life, the orchid was Sorrow's whole world. Then one winter's night, everything changes. Sorrow's sister Patience is tragically killed, their mother suffers a breakdown, Sorrow is sent to live with her father in Miami, away from the only home she has ever known. Now 16, Sorrow's memories of her life in Vermont are madly hazy. Even the details of her sister's death are unclear. She returns to the orchard for the summer, determined to answer her questions that have haunted her. Why has her mother kept her distance over the last 8 years? What actually happened on the night Patience died? What other long-buried secrets has the orchard been waiting for her to uncover? By the critically acclaimed author of Shadow Graves comes a darkly magical novel about a mysterious family legacy, the bounds of sisterhood, and the strange, powerful ways we are shaped by the places we call home. Ooh, sounds so good! And it's a hardback, and it has the beautiful cover underneath that is basically red. It says Wallace and The Memory Trees, and I like this. I haven't actually got a bookshelf here, but I will be getting one next year, this year, and I will be able to show you the books that I do have on the bookshelf, because a lot of my stuff isn't at my house at the moment. That's a long story, but yes, I will eventually have my bookshelf and I will be able to show you the books that I've got and do one of those like bookshelf things that they do on YouTube. That'd be quite fun. And I can put them on different like orders and themes and make them look organised. So yeah, I'm excited to do that, and the good thing about these books is I can promote it like this or promote it without the cover, and I really like it when books have this because it makes you feel like you're reading two different types of books. I love the sleeves, they're so cool. Okay, so The Memory Trees. So The Memory Trees is by Wallace. It's published by HarperCollins and it was published on the 10th of October, so I'm a little bit late with reading it. We're reviewing it for you because we got it in the November Box Club. It's 415 pages on the website, on here, 415 pages, and it's a YA fantasy, a spooky kind of Book Box Club book. Okay, so the subject is family history, past and present. It's based in modern day times, but it also goes back to the 17th century. That's the furthest point that it goes back to. The main characters is Sorrow, her sister Patience, her mother Verity, and her grandmother. So the main events is Patience died in a fire, and Sorrow left when she was 8 years old to go and live with her father in Miami. But she doesn't remember Vermont, and she goes back to try and find out and remember it. So before I read the rest of it, there's something about this book that is really cool and really interesting that I really liked. And each chapter, not every single chapter, but the majority of the chapters, the first chapter is about Sorrow, and the second one goes to Rejoice Lovegood, which was her first ever ancestor of the Lovegoods. It then has another chapter about Sorrow, and then it'll have another ancestor, then I'll go back to that one. And it's basically like finding your family tree. And if you guys haven't done this, you should try and find out about your family tree. I've been researching my family tree for about 3-4 years now, okay? I've been doing it on and off. When I first started it, I could not stop. My grandma was giving me so much information, and I was asking my mum and my dad, and I was trying to find out as much information as I could. My nan's brothers, one of them lives in New Zealand, which I haven't found, but I found one of her cousins. I found some of my granddad's cousins, my mum's side. I found so many people, and one of the family members that I found actually went to my school and was in the year below me, and her brother was in my sister's year. And it's so weird that I've gone to school every single day, seen this person, said hello, been friendly with this person, and it turns out this person is actually my cousin and my grandma's brother's granddaughter. So it's so weird how it's a small world. So for those of you that haven't researched your family tree, like I said, you should have researched your family tree and find out a little bit about it. It's so exciting, and when you start to uncover secrets and histories and photos and stuff is just so great. And I think that is why I love this book so much, is because I've actually researched my family tree and I've gone back to like the 18th century, and it's so exciting to think that actually, although they're the 18th century, I've actually gone back to the 17th century because I can find their parents, and it's so exciting. And I think that is why I like this book so much. And in the front of the book there is 2 family trees. So you have Sorrel's family tree, the Lovegoods, and then you have the Abrams family tree. So the Lovegoods goes from a lady called Rejoice and Alfred, and it goes all the way along to Sorrow. And then you've got the Abrams, which goes from Clement all the way up to Ethan. So that is what I really liked about it. The oldest story that it has is Rejoice Lovegood. She died in 1790. It doesn't really say how old she was, but let's say she was in her 60s when she died, or even her 70s. You're going back to the beginning of the 17th century, and when you go back that far, you start to think, hang on a minute, they had such different lives, like the way that they dressed, the women and men's rights. Like in this, Rejoice had to pretend that she had a husband that died so she could buy this land, and that is what started the orchard. But she had to have been married to have bought that land, whereas a man could have just gone up with a bag of gold and said, hey, I want to buy this land, and they would have said, cool, sign the deed. But she had to sort of pretend that she was married so she could get that bit of land. I don't really know how she got the money to buy the land. It doesn't really say that, but the point is that it's a lot different to what it was like nowadays. So Sorrow was 8 years old. It's based in modern times, so let's say it's 2017. So she was 8 years old and her sister died in a fire. So in this orchard that her mother owns and her grandmother owns, there is a thing called a cider house, and it's basically like an outbuilding down at one end of the orchard. So in that cider house, no one really uses it. They used to use it to make cider because obviously apples make cider, and no one really uses it. And one day her sister was down there for whatever reason, it tells you in here, but for whatever reason she was down there. She basically died in a fire, and I think it was the cider house as well, I'm not sure. I think it was actually the playhouse on the Abrams land. So imagine that the orchard is here, the Abrams land is just next door, so they share the fence on the land, and they've been trying to like fight over who has what land and how big they have and whatever. But that's all history. Pun, joke, not very funny, but yeah, that's ancient history. That sounds better. But yeah, so the fire started in the Abrams shed, playhouse building, and then a few years later or months later, whatever, it happened into the cider house. So everyone thought that there was this drunk crazy person going around, but actually there's a little bit more to that story, but I won't spoil that for you. I know I do some spoilers, but I won't spoil that bit for you, because that is the ending and that is what happens, and if I spoil everything for you, there's no point you read the book. There is, because it's great, but yeah. So she basically goes back home to where her mother lives, where she was born, and her grandma lives, and she goes back there to try and find out what happened to her sister and why her sister died in the fire, and you know, all that kind of stuff. Because every single day in her life, she knows she had a sister, she knows about Vermont, she knows about her family and stuff, and she knows her sister died, but she doesn't really remember how it happened, which is strange, because she was only 8 years old, and you would remember that. She may not remember every single detail, but she would remember why her sister was there and what actually happened to her, but she doesn't. So she's seen a psychiatrist. She lives in Miami with her father and her stepmother and her stepsister. And she says to her father, I need to go home. I need to find mum, I need to go home, and I need to find out what happened to Patience. So she goes there for a month, and her mother won't talk about her sister. It's all like this is secrecy. There's all these secrets. Her grandmother's mute, she doesn't talk, though she used to. And all of a sudden they've both had this, Lovegood and the Abrams, they've both had this family feud that's dated back to Rejoice Lovegood and Clement. I think it was Clement, let me double check. Yeah, and Clement. So they had this huge family history that has started with them when obviously she brought the orchard. So the history has continued to go on and on and on, all the way down to, like I said, the final Lovegood and the final Abram, which is Ethan and Sorrow. So the family feud has been going on and on and on. So when she goes back home, she's always been believed that you cannot speak to the Abrams, you cannot leave the house, you have to be homeschooled. If we leave the house, it's with me. They've lived a sheltered life. The biggest journey she's ever had was to Miami, which is a long way, but the biggest journey she ever had was going to Miami to live with her father that she very rarely saw. And sorry, I know I'm talking about way too much in one go. I'm just trying to think in my head the best way to tell you how good this book is and to explain about it, but I just keep thinking of other things. So I apologise if this is like a really quick, muddled up review. Okay, so back to where we were. So she goes to see her mother. Her father lets her go, and there's a boy working on the farm, and this boy is Ethan Abrams. And Sarah's like, Mum, hang on a minute, why are you having an Abrams working in our orchard, our farm? Why is he working here? I thought we hated them. And she's like, he's not like the others. And I'm like, but hang on a minute, if he has grown up knowing that he has to hate the Lovegoods and they hate him and whatever, vice versa, why would you be working in the orchard? But obviously he's different to the others. Sorry, that's the doorbell. So obviously he's different to the others and he's a decent guy, so it's all sort of worked out well like that. So he works on the farm, and she starts to think, hang on a minute, maybe our family history isn't as mysterious as we believed it to be. Although it is, there are still big secrets. If they're starting to be friends with the Abrams, or one Abram in particular, then it can't be as bad as they thought. So once she gets to Vermont, she starts to remember things very, very slowly. She starts to remember about her sister, she starts to have these flashbacks, and there's these things that she collects. It could be anything, any trinket. It could be a thimble, it could be a watch, it could be a piece of glass that's shiny, or it could be a ring, it could be anything. When she's in the orchard, she finds these things, and when the story goes back to the past in the chapters, you'll see things in that story with that character that character has either had or has been on like an ornament on the wall, and you start to realise that those trinkets are actually people from their history that have either dropped it or left it or been buried within. It's just come up from the trees, or a bird's carried it across, or whatever. And when she was younger, she used to collect these trinkets. So when she's in the orchard, when she goes back, she starts to find these trinkets, and that trinket makes her remember something. It could just be a story that her mum told her. It could be a memory that she's actually experienced herself. So as she stays in Vermont, she starts to uncover more secrets. She starts to realise that her mother actually has been lying about some things, that her grandmother's got a past that you didn't even think she would have, that actually the Abrams and the Lovegoods are a lot more, I mean, they're not related through blood or anything like that. So when I say related, I don't mean related because of marriage or love or whatever. I just mean that there is a lot more that ties them together than you actually thought. There may have been this history that they've had, but actually they're tied together through more than just being neighbours. They both hate each other, but you actually start to see that there wasn't always hate, there was love. And I don't just mean romantic love, I just mean love in general. So that is a spoiler for you then, I suppose. Okay, so if we can go to the trees, I can give you a little bit more detail about the characters. So this is a spoiler, but it's not like a major spoiler. So let's go from the Lovegoods first. So it started with a Rejoice and Alfred. They then had a daughter called Fearful. Now with the Lovegoods, they will never keep a man's name. It will always be Lovegood. Whether you're married or not, it will always be Lovegood. So they had a Fearful, which then went on to a Silence and a John Derry. And they had children as well. I'm just going to sort of stick to the main trunk of the tree. So then it went on to Grace. Then there was an Anne and a Mary, who went on to a Justice and a Righteous. So Justice had Faith, who had Joyful, who had Devotion, who had Perseverance, which is Sorrow's grandmother, then had Verity, who is Sorrow's mum, and then had Sorrow and Patience. So on to the Abrams. There was a Clement, who had a Cotton, who had an Encourage, who had a William, who had a Phineas, who had a Peter, a Simon, a George with a Catherine, and Eli, and then it splits. Then it goes on to a Paul and Hannah, who had a Julie and a Cassie, and then Eli had a Dean, who had the Jodie, who had an Ethan. So Julie and Cassie are the neighbours. They're the two daughters of the Hannah, who lives at the actual Abrams property. That's where she lives, and they're literally just next door. Now Julie is the oldest one, and she's the same age as Patience, so she's 16, so she would have been 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, she would have been 24 years old if Patience had still been alive. So they're the same age. And then there's Sorrow, who is 16 now, 16, 17, and then her sister, I think it was Cassie. Yeah, Cassie, so they're the same age. That's sort of where you get the ages. And I think Ethan is about the same age as Sorrow. He may be a little bit older. But yeah, they're about the same age. So there's a lot of history between them two. There's so much I want to talk to you about, but it's very hard because in this book, every single chapter has a spoiler to what the ending's going to be about. So I can't actually say too much, but it was really, really, really good. It was really exciting, really fun to read. I want to read it again because it was so good. But like I said, I think it's because I've researched my family history that I've really started to enjoy that kind of thing. And it made me realise that all families aren't perfect. I mean, mine isn't. And when I've gone back to my family history, I found out that my great-great-granddad, my nan's granddad, he actually married my great-granddad's mum and had him and my great-great-great-aunt, and they actually got married, but then she died, so then he married her sister and had all these other children. But it's like, it's weird because that is what happened back then. Like, it's so weird. Like, nowadays, you don't have that as much. Like, when my nan was younger, you had to marry, then have children, you had to do all these things, but now it doesn't matter. So things will change, and it's exciting and interesting to learn about your history, especially when you see the photos. So I think that's why I like this book so much, and I would love to write something like this where it's got my family and my history, not necessarily about my family, but because every family's got the same thing. They've got the same great-grandfather who's done something, they've got the same great-aunt who never married and travelled, or they've all got these people. All the characters are the same. And that's what's exciting, and that is what's normal. No matter how weird your family is, it's actually normal, because everyone's family is weird and everyone's family is normal to other people, because everyone's going to have something up over someone else's family, and everyone else is going to be like, damn, my family looks pretty good right now, but then actually if you dig back further you'll realise that your family isn't. But yeah, that's a completely different kind of story. But yeah, the memory trees is really good. I gave it 5 stars because I thought that it was absolutely amazing. I'm not going to give it a heart, only because I have my very select few. So this is 5 cups of tea. That took me to finish this book because I could not stop. So that was amazing. So my most exciting part was when you go back to the past and learn more about her family. Not just hers, but the Abrams as well. The summary was it's a very, very good book. The past and present was a great idea. A good story, ending and characters. The favourite part of the story was seeing the past with Sorrow and her sister's Patience. Because there was a few times with Sorrow when it would be 8 years earlier and you got to actually meet Patience and you got to see her mum in a different light. The review was an amazing book. I love the reading and learning about the past. So that was my book review for the memory trees. Let me know down below if you've ever researched your family tree, and if you don't know how to and you want a few tips, or you want me to tell you a little bit about my family and how I worked it out and how I did things just to help you guys, I'd love to do that. I'd love to do a video, or I can send you an email or something, whatever. If you want to know some tips and tricks, let me know down below and I'll help you. If not, my question for you is, have you read this book? And if you haven't, why not? It's really good. I think it's in US dollars, but it's $17.99 in US dollars, which is probably about £12 or something in UK. But yeah, I got it from a book box club, so I'm not 100% sure on the actual amount. But yes, have a look on Amazon and check this book out, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.